Yo, yo, oh, uh-oh, I didn't do it. I didn't say it to everyone. I gotta go do it. I gotta go do it. Oh no! Hi there, ho there. Hi there, everybody. I'm Cliff Bates, and welcome to the Friday live stream. We're minutes away. We're a minute away to start time. Hold on. I'm giving the flash on X. We are up and running. Hurrah! Okay, welcome everybody. Hi there. No one's here yet, so we're kind of like dead in the water. I'm here today. We're doing the live stream at our normal time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time or 5 p.m. Central European Time. On Fridays, we're back. Today was my last, well, actually, technically, this is the last day of the semester for classes for the winter semester. We're starting next, in a couple weeks, we're going to start the spring semester. I have class next week. Next week, I have a class. It's supposed to be the exam session, but I'm having class. They're going to be doing their presentations. I'm going to shut up. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to let them talk for the first time. And I'll give I'll give suggestions how they can improve it and how they can do it. And each one of them get about 20 minutes each, and it's going to be like, oh, yay. Well, that's about the doozies of the thing. Doozy, rah, rah, rah. As I said last week I was busy. I was busy doing what? I don't know. Hold on. Let's see if I can get the Facebook. No, come on. There's some great pictures on my Facebook page about this. Hold on. People are saying, yes, my relationship with the Mid-Tuscan. They fixed the page. They've had to fire someone there, the editing thing. So it's going to be, the Miss Token is going to be releasing issues. I'm going to get my piece. I think one of my pieces is going to come soon, by a couple days from now. So I'm hoping that's going to be there. I'm hoping to get some people to write for that. That's going to be good. It's kind of like a thing, but let's go back to what I was doing last week. Why we couldn't do a live stream last week? Because I was on Polish television. If you looked at my page, a Facebook page, you would have seen me. You would have seen I'll put you guys. I will put you guys here. Here's the live stream. So I have the link into live stream. This was what I was doing. I was basically doing they were doing the Trump thing. It was a debate in Polish television for their TVP, Polish Television World, their English language world site. It was basically I was brought in as a pro-Trump people and not pro-Trump people. It was like two women, NGOs. One was a former Polish senator who was an ambassador to the U.S., a consular official. Very neoliberal, very much a neoliberal thing. It was fun, kind of tweaking her a little bit, because because very anti-Trump. Oh my God, liberal order! Oh my Trump's horrible. Oh. I like to say, oh, okay, yes, fee, fi, full, my smell of You're the party of kleptocrats. You're a kleptocrat. You're a neoliberal kleptocrat, and therefore, in America, your guys would be put in jail, okay, for the kind of nonsense that they engaged in. I said, I've been here too long. I've lived in Central Europe for 20-something years. I was on your side when I came here. I knew your people. I saw it firsthand with the quasi illegal things, all the things that I saw them do and experienced and heard and knew about. It just horrified the hell out of me. So, I joke, and I even joked to her. I said, you know who made me a Trump supporter? You guys did. that just horrified her. It was. I didn't say it at the debate. I said that, thanks. Of course, she couldn't even answer the question. She was asked to give a positive thing. She couldn't give a positive thing. I was asked to give a negative. I gave a negative. I thought Trump. I said the thing I fear most is that Trump will get bored with it. I don't think he will, because look how he's doing too much. He's done more already right now. Right now in his third day, and he's 3/4 day into the thing, and he's accomplished as much. He's getting to the point where he's going to hit the 100. There was a joke in Poland that after almost a year in power, they have not delivered they promised to do 100 things. The PO government did. They didn't even do they haven't done, they haven't delivered any of the 100 promises that they did. Maybe about 4 or 5, 6 or 7, maybe 10 at most of the 100 promises. Trump has already delivered most of the things he said. Most of the things he talked about in his speech, he's set into motion already. I mean, that's how amazing this has been. So I had the conference. We went, not conference, it was a talk thing. It was a setup. It was most of the audience were liberal students who were going to, the idea they're going to have ironically, my wife was in the audience because she came with me, and they asked her to go, you can sit in the audience. And she was joking, saying that they had people voting both, pro and against. So the idea that the debate was going to change anyone's mind is silly. One, false, and two, there's not really a true debate. If it was a debate, it was kind of like a silly debate with really, and the two TV. Okay, the woman, the international relations woman, who was the woman host, she really didn't know a lot about America. I mean, she was just repeating certain things as facts that were not right, like that. Oh, the 2020, Project 2025 is a Trump administration policy agenda. No, it was It was 2025 is a product of the Heritage Foundation, not a product Trump's. Not a Trump constructed policy thing. Now, will Trump support some of the things in 2025? Maybe, yeah, he will. But everything in 2025? No. In fact, there's things in 2025 that he stringently opposes. 2025 is Heritage Foundation. They wanted to privatize Social Security and these things, and Trump's never going to touch Social Security. This idea that they're gonna derail Social Security and touch things like that. Trump wants to save. I mean, in fact, in many ways, Trump has no desire to do certain things. I mean, he's more likely to end income taxes, by pushing tariffs and having the way he's doing corporate taxes. He might ultimately move to kind of get rid of income taxes. In that sense, this is why he's targeting countries and tariffs, retaliatory and responses the way they're doing. And deals is that, okay, if you want that 15% tax rate, companies, if you want that 15% tax rate, you got to produce jobs in America. If you're not producing jobs in America, you're going to pay 2021. Okay, you understand that this is the way they're doing it. And if you produce jobs in America, well, you're going to produce the other benefits. This is it's so amazing. I mean, how much billions? I mean, someone said it was almost of already what he's gotten in, well, at least 20 or 30 international investors, on average $200 million, $200 billion, sorry, to invest in the United States, investing in AI, the AI development projects and the new energy products, all these things. It's, he might at the end of his, by the end of this, before the end of this year, he might has increased the American economy by $3 to $4 trillion. If all these, if the rate of new projects continue, and if he's able to attract these things and they start implementing them, the scale of the growth of the economy may be so big that what may happen is that just the growth of the economy and the current intake of revenue from taxes and fees and things like that could significantly address the deficit, and particularly if aspects of actually cutting some agency stuff. The fact that a whole bunch of civil servants are threatening to quit and leaving, this is great. Means Trump may be able to shut down whole departments. A whole bunch of guys started to protest and not do things. Oh, because okay, great. You don't do your job. That's an excuse to fire your ass. Okay, so I mean, this is what and of course, this is I think right now we're talking. Pete Hegseth is being voted on. I think he'll make it. Yes, Sue Collins and McCorsky, the women senators, Republican women senators might cuck out. It might vote against them, but I think ultimately at the end of the day, Sue Collins will she will shut her mouth and vote. The Alaska woman, I'm not so sure about. She might as well become a Democrat because she is acting like the only thing that prevents her from being a Democrat is the social issues that she doesn't believe in, but she's so corrupt that she's on that side. So it's just. Ugh. So the last week I was away. We didn't able. I said I made a pre-recorded thing, which I talked about 2 books. I was basically looking at some books that I was reading. I got some more things. My friend of mine, insisted that I get this book. This is a new book. It came this week. Who's Afraid of Christian Nationalism? By Mark David Hall. Now, Mark David Hall, I know his work. He has a wonderful book on Roger Sherman. And he's collected, Liberty Fund edition of Sherman's essays. He helped edit, but he also did what else? He also did a book on Liberty Fund. What is it? Liberty Fund on what is it? I have the name. His last book was Proclaim Liberty Through the Land, which is How Christianity Advanced Freedom. That's Fidelis, now the same publisher, Fidelis book. But before that, he was a good one. He said his book on Roger Sherman and the Creation of the American Republic, and the Forgotten Founders of Religion and Public Life. Both are very academic books. He had his Liberty Fund volume on Roger Sherman that was very important in that sense. I think this was the 2010 book on Sherman is very important book. His stuff on the Founding Fathers, the Faith in the Founding Fathers, is a very good book. He was at for a long time. He was at George Fox University, but now he's at Regent University. Regent was what's his name, Pat Robertson School. And Regency is a very interesting school in that sense. And he runs the PhD programs there. So I mean, this is a very interesting book. This is. I mean, I've been following his kind of debates on people trying to argue that this idea that some people saying that Christian nationalism is a threat to that it's, first of all, there's elements among the Baptists and liberal churchmen who look at Christian nationalism as an attack on the church. Okay. And then there's others who look at it as it is violation of the First Amendment. In other words, there's 2 sides. There's people who look at this as basically that Christian nationalism violates the constitutional order, the First Amendment, and the constitutional order, and then it's a threat to the church, right? Then there is the idea that Christian nationalism is white supremacy, not extreme anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitic. It's the problem with he does a very good job defending all those arguments. Now he will admit that some of the defenders, some people like Torba, who made some anti-Semitic statements, and probably Toba. I don't think Toba is an anti-Semite in a true sense, but he represents what I call the Old Testament, the old-fashioned old. Even though he's not a Catholic, he sounds like the pre-Vatican II reactionary Catholics on the Jewish question. Okay, on the question. In other words, there is this tendency. Now, I think we have to understand that there is a distrust of liberal Judaism in that sense. Torba is in his Christ is King kind of position. It is more closer. There is this weird thing, and is it Charles? What is Wolf's last name? I always want to get his name right, but I always, I freak out. Wolf. Is it Greg Wolf? Not Greg Wolf. Wolf's case for Christian nationalism. Andrew Toba, but this is the whole problem of Doug Wilson's stuff on this, and the whole question of Doug Wilson and Canon Press, all tied to this question of and remember, Canon Press was responsible for publishing. Is it now? I don't have the note. It doesn't have the note. Now, what is the? Yeah, it's Stephen Wolf. Stephen Wolf, The Case for Christian Nationalism, published by Canon Press, which again owned by Doug Wilson. Andrew Toba and Andrew Asker, Christian Nationalism: A Biblical Guide. This was published by Gab themselves, and distributed through that. Gab is, his attempt at social media, that Torba's own thing that's out there, was free speech absolutist, but also tended to allow more extremist and sometimes, anti-Semitic voices or extreme right-wing voices that were silenced elsewhere went there and were permitted on free speech ground. I remember the left. I remember the ACLU types in the 1970s and 80s and even 90s defending Nazis and other people being able, the idea of free, this is ironic now. Now that position is held as an alt-right position and condemned by the ACLU has abandoned their civil libertarian position on this and kind of broke woke in that sense and violated their own conceptions of this. I don't necessarily have to like the argument is we don't agree with them. Just because we allow you to speak doesn't mean we agree with you. Just because I'm trying to not stop you. That's the whole point of that. And I think Hall's book does a good job addressing some valid criticisms of some Christian nationalism about Ecker and these guys. And I think a lot of this has been part of what we call what is recently the Antioch Declaration problem. This book is recently done, but it doesn't really address the Antioch Declaration, which deals with aspects of what we call the alt-right, or the not alt-right, that's a dead term. That's so 2016 term. What is it? Not alternative, but dissident right. But even dissident right is problematic in that sense. You have such a range of people in here, and Christian nationalism could be understood as this a derogatory term. This is why it's a very difficult term, because what is meant by it is usually thrown around. If the term is thrown around like a $2 whore, so much by the left and the mainstream media to belittle and to besmear other people. It's like Nazi. It's become associated with Nazi in that sense. So, and what Hall does in his other work was showing that, listen, there's a Christian foundation of certain things. This is the problem with this. This is why it's kind of frustrating. If you read Tocqueville even argues the Christian foundation. Now, does he argue that the American Constitution is a Catholic or a Christian instrument? In other words, no, it's not. It is not a sectarian document, and there was never a design to allow the federal government to be a sectarian, to advance a sectarian position. It was designed. It was, in other words, the people, the nation, was a Christian nation. Okay, the people who formed the nation was a Christian nation, but the political constitutional form was basically was agnostic. It was not going to favor. It was a liberal, or not even liberal. I think even liberal. I think it is Republican. It is a Republican institution, a constitution that sought to allow for the Union to have an effective, the national government, the Union, to be effective, and the states to be preserved, and to preserve their identity. Now, after the Civil War, the 14th Amendment ended this. Before the 14th Amendment, states had more control over religion. In fact, even to the 1830s, some states still had established religion. Okay, in America. In other words, the First Amendment didn't apply to the states. Most of the Bill of Rights did not apply to the states. It was restrictions on Congress. Okay, so therefore, this is why we have to be careful about when we talk about these things. That's why Christian nationalism is, what is meant by this. America is a political union. It's not in fact, it's the nation is different than the union is the union of states. It's a political construction. It houses a nation, a people. The people is, by the way, this is not an ethnic nation. This nation is it emerges out of a people who came and has an ethnicity. But then what happened was that it evolved. It became, in other words, the ethnicity emerged out of the civic institutions, the states, the colonies, the states. They had a people. The people then created a union. Over time, this is I look at Bernard Yack. This is something I have to work on for American. I have to work on a little bit. I have a paper that's due April 1st. I think I will spend much of February doing it. I have something ready to be sent to the European Conservative, to my friend at European Conservative, on the kind of rework of the paper, but I need to read it. It's done. It's been done since, honestly, it's been done since beginning of January, but I just didn't have I haven't really been, a good boy and sit down with a piece of paper, sit down and read it, and with the pen. I need to take it it's my review of De La Mora's Egalitarian Envy that I had to rewrite because they didn't like the one I did originally. It's a little too long. I need to cut it down a bit, and I'm a little nervous about that. But then the other thing I have to do for American interest is on Yack, this idea of civic nationalism, ethnic nationalism, and advancing the Yack hypothesis that this distinction between the two is a false dichotomy. and that therefore over time a civic nationalism produces an ethnicity. Okay, the idea of producing a people, and this is something I was talking about in today's class. We had a weird class today, the last real discussion. I went off the rail, and I was mad at myself because I was trying to address this, and one of the colleagues who talks about gun culture and incarceration culture, American incarceration. And I kind of said, oh, God, don't you understand that, yes, we incarcerate a lot of people, but that's the nature of liberalism, that liberals believe in incarceration. Why? Because you rehabilitate. In other words, and if you have and back away, you're going to, if you have a multicultural people, you're going to incarcerate. Why? Because, I'm sorry, because the diverse people are going to, these people don't have the same. If you don't integrate them, you don't force them to adapt your culture and adapt your values, there's going to be conflicts about what is proper behavior, what's not proper behavior, and therefore what's going to happen is there's going to be, and also when government starts regulating more, when the stupid liberals start regulating about you can't have plastic straws or you can't have 52-ounce glasses. You only can sell these smaller sodas and no straws. Well, I'm sorry, when you make any law, you then authorize policemen to enforce it. Okay? So all these leftists who talk about the environment and want to pass these laws, well, that means you're going to have to put men with guns to enforce it. That means when somebody who think they can make a little money, usually someone who's an immigrant or a migrant or a poor person or usually minority who will not necessarily have the same conception of what is right, don't see, they're poor and they don't see the, environmental issues are kind of the comfort. If you're a working class, poor person, you want to make some money, you'll sell, and that people will pay you money will want plastic straws, you'll sell people plastic straws. Well, but that's against the law. You're violating the law now. We have to send police to stop you from distributing illegal soda. So what happens then is you get a situation where a police officer shoots a minority person. Oh, why? Because the minority person struggled with the police when they try to stop them. And, you have the cases in New York of the street seller who then, when the police went to stop fine, and he refused to pay the fine, refused to pay the ticket. He resisted with the police, and the police, when they went to arrest him, he fought back. Then there was a problem. There was a shooting, and they got shot. Even if you don't use the guns, you have to use physical force to grab people and drag them to jail. Okay, they will resist. And what happens? They resist. You use more force. And then what happens? They escalate, and before all of a sudden someone will get killed. Oh, but that's police violence. And then what happens? Then what happens is when they resist, what happens? What could have been a misdemeanor now becomes a felony. So you're thrown in the jail. The more you make social policy, the more law you make, the more enforcement there is. The more enforcement there is, the more violence there is. And the more violence there is that you need to, this is the cycle of this. This is what's wrong with us. This is why you make, all these goody two-shoe guys who talk about environmental concerns, environmental rules. Well, once you make laws, and the more laws and more regulations you put in, the more enforcement there is, and then the more police you need. And then the more police you need, the second anyone resists will then be, now it's going to be, and then, you have police state. You have a coercive state. And then the worst thing of it is then it's selective. You enforce certain rules against certain groups, and you have what's happened in England, two-tier. We're not going to arrest or punish this group because actually, if they do that, they'll riot and cause problems. If we go these BIPOCs, if we start arresting Pakistanis for rape gangs and things like that, they may actually come out in violence and kill cops. No. Let's have peace here. We're too chicken shit to arrest these people because we don't want to be called racist. And if we try to enforce it, We will have to use actual violence to impose order because they will fight. We just might as well arrest people. It's easier to arrest a whole bunch of old people and elderly people or young people who say something on social media because they won't burn the place down. And if they burn the place down, we can call them white supremacists because they're white. Okay, that's the silly thing about what happens in England. Now this happens in America too. It's different. It's at the state local level, and that's why what happens in America. It's called white flight. White working class people fled, and middle class people fled most cities. So the cities become brown, and once they become brown and black, they become cesspools, right? You show me a major like Atlanta, a place like that, white flight, man. And with white flight goes the tax money, and no tax money. That means. Oh, my wife's probably seeing me say this. No tax money means what? Remember how tax money works in America? It's sales tax. Most cities and towns and state institutes, they generate sales tax, and some big cities have an additional sales tax. They have hotel tax. They have property tax, sales tax. They get commissions. They get maybe a % extra addition on income or sales tax. So what happens when people leave the town, city? Well, they don't pay that tax anymore. Okay, they leave their property. They abandon the property. Who pays? In other words, only and businesses. Well, if businesses don't come there, they're not paying the tax. They're not paying the money to the developers, and the developers can't pay the tax. Okay, and therefore the local communities don't have revenue. They have to depend more and more on the state legislatures to give them money. And how the states do it? The states make their money through income tax and sales tax, the full sales tax. And what happens is that if they pay too much tax, what happens? In fact, during the 1970s, to prevent local governments to increasing taxes through on property tax and things. There were whole sense of many states had proposition. Massachusetts had a huge proposition, which put a freeze that it did not allow, it capped property taxes. And that's, I think, the same thing in California. They capped property taxes. And by doing this, they forced, therefore the municipal entities ended up becoming more and more dependent on state revenues. And therefore, the state budget took more. There was things like public schools, and actually, as the federal government increased mandates in education and things like this, and the states increased mandates in education, this then led to greater dependency on state municipal schools. Remember, America's schools are products and funded by municipalities and counties, municipal entities and counties, not states. They get these things are creatures of the municipalities, or maybe a coalition of multiple municipalities to a county, or some kind of cooperative of municipalities or counties in smaller population areas. Okay, these are quasi municipality structures. You can have school districts. You can have these are quasi municipal constructions in America. School districts, things like that. Which then do what? They issue the taxes. They can issue taxes through property taxes and things like that. So therefore, again, if you have a structure of, this is why America is far more complicated than Europe in that sense. The levels of government with taxing authority goes much further than in Europe. Europe is a much more centralized system. In other words, your education, your hospitalization, your hospitals, your fire departments, your police departments, your schools are centralized to a significant degree, funded by controlled by ministries and financed centrally. In America, it's completely decentralized. It's a decentralized structure with much more control in local entities. And so therefore, what happens when populations change? You have basically, like Los Angeles, the rise of the incompetent. Why is LA burning? LA is burning because you have a lot of morons because what happened? the responsible people, the old elite, left. And all of a sudden they promoted a whole bunch of minorities and a whole bunch of basically, the right kind of people, lesbians, transsexuals, educated people, wank, wank, who just are, just look at the disaster of what's happening in Los Angeles, California, where you have a policy, instead of pursuing a policy to ensure that there's enough water to be able to prevent fires and proper land management. No. We don't want any land management because we believe in the green. We should let the things occur. So therefore, you don't rake, you don't remove dead forests. You pursue a policy that actually increases the risk at the same time as you prevent the huge lakes and the water coming from Canada and the Rockies are then diverted to the Pacific so that some fish doesn't get killed or is not threatened environmentally. So, this is the silliness of it. This is the environment. Oh, we have to care for our environment. I care more about the governor cared more about that stupid fish than he cared about the lives of all the Californians who have had their lives destroyed because of these fires. Okay, this is silly. This is stupid, and they get away with it because I'm sorry, the population, the voters. When you import these kind of voters from third world countries who are not capable of governing themselves, they don't govern themselves back in where they come from. They're basically people who are bossed or bullied by either local elites or gangs or authorities. They're not capable of self-governing. So they come to America to get money and escape the hell they're from, but they're not capable of governing. And then all of a sudden they become populations. They get abused by the Democratic Party to ensure we welcome you here. We give you these goodies. Here's the goodies. Vote for us. And what happens is elect our people. Then instead of the Democrats then putting responsible people, the Democrats said, "Oh no, we got to. I want to become elected, and I want to appease my donor base. I want to appease the voter base of my groups. So therefore, I'm gonna LBGT, green policy, do all these things, right? Okay, but then your cities become cesspools. Your cities become ungovernable structures. Why? Maybe okay if you promoted Democrats who say one thing but at least govern properly. That was the old JFK. The old liberals would mouth the social justice crap, but then do what's necessary. They were practical. FDR would practice human rights. They'll say, "Well, we got to let the darkies vote." Eleanor would go there and champion black voting rights, but then what does he do? He made the deal with the Southern Democrats to basically screw African Americans in the South by allowing the white Southern Democratic elite to put state control over licensing and business regulations, which basically brought Jim Crow to the economy. So come on, you want to, that was, go look carefully. Anyone who studies American history, African Americans were growing in the South, were actually prospering up until the New Deal. They might not have had voting rights. Jim Crow might have been there, and it might have been if they got too uppity, they might get in trouble. But there was actual economic growth. That's where the famous Tulsa riots, right? Why did the Tulsa massacre happen in Tulsa, Oklahoma? It was because they were growing faster. They were the African American community in Tulsa was far more prosperous than the poor white trash that was coming into Oklahoma late. In other words, that's the whole problem with this. In other words, a lot of the whites who came there were not being educated, not being trained. Well, the African Americans were training. They were going there for economic purpose. They had professions. They were doing things. And what happened? Well, if we can't win, we can start using violence, and we start. This is the thing about this. This is why, if you look carefully at these stories, it's more complicated than what the left wants to say. And it was caused mostly by Democrats. Some of the greatest racial injustice against African Americans were done by the Democrats in order to done for the purpose of what? I'm not going to say, okay, then we should ignore some of these issues. No, it is that we should be honest about them. We should be honest about them and say they're more complicated than they are. And therefore, we should look at some of the problems of the Democratic Party today and say, well, at least they were the hypocrites of the old Democratic, the Roosevelts and even the Kennedys. At least put semi-competent people in charge of things at municipal levels. The old political bosses used to have responsibility. Now, what happened was that we wanted to create, that's what the whole thing, machine politics, there was accountability because the machine did not deliver. The other party would come in, and then what happened? The jobs would go with the machine, right? The opposition party they'd fire the fire department would be fired, the police department would be fired. All these guys, in other words, whoever controlled the mayor's office or the city government would then do what? I'm going to give the city jobs to my friends. Patronage politics. That was American political life. And to a great degree, a lot of American city urban life is still patronage. That's why, this is why it's not that. And once you have that much patronage situations, you don't have much democratic turnover, because because everyone who has the job, anyone who's on the public tit, who gets a job is going to vote for the party that gave them the job. Okay, the government contracts, the things. The more government can do, the more government delivers as services, the more they can bribe voters. That's how democracy works, baby. That's how the nature of the democratic systems work. They bribe voters. They deliver the services and they do things. This is the nature of these systems. So it's a much more, again, a very complicated reality here. So therefore, when these current American cities you go look at them. You look at the clown show. Now, I mean, this is one of the good things about what the chaos that Biden did with the border and the illegal and the moving of these illegal aliens into the big cities by the southern governors, Florida and Texas, by them shipping these illegal migrants up into the liberal cities. And what they did was they started to make in the restricted economic environment of most capital cities right now, like New York, Chicago, all these big democratic blue machines are so badly governed, so overstripped. They don't have and given that the white middle class and not even the white, the Asian, the professional middle class has fled them for elsewhere. They fled these cities. They're gone. Chicago, a significant part of the old industrial, the old prosperous investor classes and the people like that of New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Boston, they're not there in the big city anymore. They fled. They went to either the suburbs or to elsewhere, the rural areas. Some of them went to New Hampshire. Some of the Massachusetts liberals moved into. Even liberals, they move. They go from New York City to my God, look at Bernie Sanders, a New Yorker who is in Vermont. Why is he in Vermont? Because Vermont was cheaper. And then he basically spread, they spread the liberal crackpot disease into the poor, the smaller communities. They spread the socialist. Bernie Sanders spread the leftist nonsense to the Vermonters. All believe in this stuff now. After 3 generations, they've been perverted. This is what's so silly about this. Look at New Hampshire. New Hampshire used to be a very libertarian state. Now they're very progressive in many issues. Why? The elites are progressive. The elites who think that that's the case, they're there. and they don't really have a large migrant or worker population. These are the basically the nice people who have land. They have middle class professional jobs. They can afford to live. They don't have to. They don't have to. In other words, you don't have to work in a factory. In other words, the factory jobs and these things are gone. What is the economy now? It's basically the professional class who can what they can. They can commute. They can commute to Boston. They can commute to New York City. They don't even now. Sometimes they don't even have to go. They only have to go there to meetings once in a while. They'll commute to their meeting location. They'll telecommute. And then there was the professional classes and their professions can do what? They can do certain jobs. In other words, doctors have to be there to see clients and that things, but not doctors. I'm talking about the financial sector, business sectors, management. These people can be running their businesses out of there, and they can go back, work in finance, financial things. See, the very wealthy can live in the countryside and commute into the big city. They can live like kings. But the rest of the population, there's no jobs for them. Therefore you have a situation of the very rural, like New England, like that. It's between these two tensions. It's between a very wealthy professional elites who live very much wonderfully in these low tax areas, and the very poor work together. Is because why the poor need social welfare programs. So these wealthy people it's still lesser. In other words, it's still far cheaper than Boston. It's still, being in Maine, being in New Hampshire, or living in Vermont, and is still cheaper than living in New York State. You understand? You understand? Living in New York, so therefore you can afford to have. You can have this wonderful house, much bigger house than you could afford, that you could ever afford in Boston or in New York City, but you can you pay less taxes. The cost of it is less, and your property tax is going to be much less. So think about this in that sense. This is why you go place. This is why, and they bring they bring their democratic urban politics with them and corrupt everything else. That's the nature of what happens in these systems. This is how the rot spreads. This is how the rot spreads. And because of the nature of the system, in other words, the state after the 14th, after the judicial of 1965 and in other words, the Supreme Court and court decisions on state legislatures and how they're proportioned. Before Baker versus Carr and the reapportionment decisions, rural areas had much larger proportional voting in many state legislatures. Okay, that's how the founding fathers wanted. They wanted to privilege rural vote over the urban vote. Well, given the changes of technology, given that there's been revolution in agriculture, in other words, you don't need large populations to do farming anymore. You have had, the technology has reduced the number of workforces, and the production of the commercialization of agriculture led in the industrialization of agriculture has basically reduced the need for a number of farms. Therefore, the likelihood of intergenerational farming has become decreased. So therefore, what's happening is there's been a shift of population to the urban areas, because that's where the jobs are. The jobs are going to be where in the urban areas. For what kind of jobs? It's going to be service jobs. It's going to be jobs that are just doing service industry, service things, service structures. The industrial base is gone. They've stopped making industrial jobs because we shipped it, during the 30 years, we've shifted 30, 40 years. We shipped from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Much of the industrial jobs of the Northeast first were moved to the South and then out to Mexico and to China, right? So you have a fundamental changing of the employment situation. Now, most of these big cities are no longer have the infrastructure to have the kind of working class, middle class jobs they used to have. Now they're service jobs. They're working at Walmart, things like that. Well, you better hope that it's people, then there's the welfare class. The welfare there's those who get money from the government. The welfare class, what they do, they buy They buy their food and they buy their stuff at the stores. Hence, that's why you need to have a service economy. You have the government creating the service economy by giving the certain classes of people welfare assistance. You have government agencies giving employment. This is the whole structure of the welfare state. The welfare state at the state level creates an instrument of government agencies which give government employment that employs people who have an incentive to vote for the same party. And now that we've gotten rid of, starting in most of the 20th century, federally they've done it with the professionalization of civil service. States have likewise followed suit. The idea that we separate, we don't want to make it. We want to say, well, it's wrong. We want to make sure teachers are teachers, and we get professionals. We get people like it. So you don't have a situation where now in the end of the 20th century and the 21st century, you don't have a change of political party leading to firing of all the government workers. And then the new party hires their voters to get those jobs. Patronage is gone. We have a professional civil service class. But what happens with this is that professional service class still is what they vote for, the party that guarantees them the jobs, that guarantees them their salary increases. So it's a pro-democrat. In other words, government working, and they're unionized. The government workers are unionized at the state and federal level, and they vote Democrat. So therefore, the states that have big governmental programs, you have a solidified Democratic voting base, and then you tie this with welfare recipients and contractor workers. Then you have a majority. This is the solid majority that ensures democratic control. This leads the foundation of one party rule, as in California. I come from one party rule state too, Rhode Island. Rhode Island. This is what happened in Rhode Island for centuries at the state level. It's democratic rule. You might get a Republican governor once in a while, but the state legislature has been solidly Democrat for at least a century now. And California too. The state assembly is a democratic monopoly. Okay, and now what they did was then rig the electoral system to ensure that all the other officers will be likewise that. That's the Californian Revolution. The California political revolution was, yes, we have a complete monopoly at the state legislature level. So let the legislative level change the electoral system to do it in a way to ensure that the Democratic Party can, what would be the Democratic primary now becomes the first run. In other words, we don't have primaries, we have, an open election, and therefore there can be 3 or 4 Democrats running. And therefore, what happens is that it's runoff election. So if the first place guy, the first and second place guy are Democrats, then there's a choice between 2 Democrats. And this happens across the whole system. Not only, remember, federal elections themselves for Senate and Congress are still done through this system. And this is what they want to do for the rest of the country. This is why it was, in other words, the disaster of what California is what the progressive left wants to do with the rest of America. And if you're not woken up to, Californians, honestly, Trump should tie any aid to in other words, I'm sorry, we're blackmailing you. You're not getting a fucking single cent of any assistance to rebuild after this if you don't remove all. You need to fix your government. If you don't fix California government, you're not going to be trusted with a single fucking additional cent. No more aid, no more things. You're corrupt. You've done this. I'm sorry. And if they want to cry baby about it, here's the little fiddle playing. Here's that little fiddle playing for you. Who cares? It serves all these wealthy middle-class people who lost their houses this is the world they built. Let them eat cake. Until they vote out Newsom, they should recall everyone. The whole Democratic Assembly should be, the governor should be recalled, the assembly should be recalled, and they need to put a new assembly of adults, not AAEO, people, adults, people who know what the fuck they're doing, should be in the recall election. They should be, I was a cop, I know how to do this, I will be the mayor for this town. Ex-military people, everyone who knows the businessmen who have had real experience doing running things. They should say, listen, you got to elect us. We have to save California now. And if we don't save California, then the federal government ain't going to help us, and we're just lose more Californians. And by the way, there should be no aid, no assistance, no government money at all to California. So all those money going to help they should freeze it, saying, no, you can't get any more. Sorry, no. If you're not, and by the way, sanctuary state, sorry, you're in violation of the law. So no federal money until you comply with federal law on immigration. Easy solution. You want the federal money, you have to comply with immigration law. It's till then, you're frozen. If you want to succeed, great. Please, Democrats in California, try insurrection. Then the 14th fucking amendment will make sure that none of you ever sit. They don't learn the lesson of they stupidly applied the argument of 14th Amendment to what happened on January 6th. They don't understand. Yeah, that argument is there for real insurrection. That means real, you are actually violating the law. You, California and sanctuary states, are in insurrection. You're trying to nullify legally valid U.S. law. In other words, but we're just challenging in the court. No. You can challenge in the court. And if the court has not given you a stay, it is still law, and you have to comply with it. If you're not willingly complying, you're saying I'm a sanctuary state, then you are violating the law. And if the authorities say if the federal government sends ICE agents and you resist them, or if any federal agencies authorized to impose the law, and you resist them, that's armed insurrection. And any official who engages in insurrection does lose that's why the 14th Amendment is a dangerous time bomb. The anti-Trump people who look at this, they weren't wrong. They just were wrong in this. In other words, that the provision does argue this. But you have to have a real insurrection. And it has to be declared by legally, you have to have a legal body actually declaring that this is an insurrection. In other words, Congress needed to vote that there was a violation. Courts would have to declare that you engaged in insurrection. You have to actually charge. They didn't charge anyone with insurrection. They couldn't do it because there was no evidence of this. If they had any real evidence of insurrection, they would have went forward with This is why the whole thing about this is so silly. Okay, we're almost at the hour note. People saying, well, you've been on a rant today. Well, this is I'm just silly. I just heard about I've been paying attention to California. I'm not from California. I'm from but I've been just looking at what's happening in California and to say, my God, this is, and I think Trump's there now. I think Trump he went to North Carolina first to kind of rub it in the Democrats' face. Think the Trump administration is in on that issue? I mean, on what issue? I think the Trump administration is going to tie aid to compliance with the law. And that's why Holman is going into these. This is why they targeted Democratic blue states, the first things. They're just waiting for some stupid Democratic mayor to use the police force or do something to act against the and I'm waiting for Pam Bondi. We have to wait till Pam Bondi is the AG. She has to be sworn in, because once she's the AG, she will then force the AGs to stop prosecuting people. And she will do it. I mean, she's many ways. Okay, I understand. Second Amendmenters, Second Amendment. Okay, certain people I know who are Second Amendment don't like her because on gun control, she is a little more moderate on gun issues and things. But as she went after corruption, and she went after voting fraud, and she went after a lot. I mean, she was a tough bird. And Pam starts, and she's competent as a lawyer. She's a prosecutor. She knows how to do these jobs, and she knows how to organize things to get prosecutions and convictions. I think she will, really, really, really start going after people. And I have to say, all these pardons are stupid. Why? Okay, this is where Alan Dershowitz is completely right. Just because you get a pardon, this actually removes your Fifth Amendment protection. In other words, you can't be charged. And by the way, if you get a pardon, you can't say I don't want it. So you can't say I didn't want to I didn't do anything wrong. Well, you get a pardon. Therefore, the president thinks you did something wrong. In other words, the mere giving of this pardon indicates that the grantor thought that there was a crime given, and he wants to pardon you for it. You're guilty. So when other bodies go to ask you to testify on these issues, you must testify. No Fifth Amendment protection. If you refuse to testify, you can be held in prison until you testify. You can be held in prison until you testify. And that is what they want to talk about now. This is why they get very annoyed about this. If you don't testify. So right now, and that, I think there was a meme going about, what did Brandon Trump say to? He should have said, why didn't you pardon yourself? Because why? Okay, the deal here is this. We're not going to put Biden in prison, but we're going to arrest. We're going to force the whole family to tell the story and prosecute Dad. Okay, at the end of the day, we will not put him in jail for humanitarian reasons, but we'll have the trial. And in doing so, we'll convict the bastard and convict the Democratic Party. In the meanwhile, it's going to, they can't not testify. Millie can't testify. So he, all the illegal things he did, he can be forced to testify against Lloyd Austin. What generals cooperated with you on this? I can't testify. I'm not going to testify. Sorry, you have to testify. They can force him to testify, and if he refuses to testify, that's a different crime. If he purges himself, that is not covered under the pardon. The pardon, giving them the pardons the way they did. I mean, I love it that the January 6th committee giving that part. Oh God, you're a convicted. President Biden argued that your whole committee committed a crime. I think every member who was given the pardon should be stripped from the Congress, stripped of their committees. The new speaker should strip them of their committees, and the majority leader should strip them of their chairmen in the Senate. In other words, sorry, no, you can't sit on any committee. You can't have a clearance. No, I don't care if you're elected senator from California. The people of California ain't gonna, you can be elected. The Californians can send you, but you're not getting a committee. You're off the committee. Democrats, I'm sorry, we're not allowing you to support. We're going to. The rest of the committee will not. The majority of the committee will not allow you. Going to sit. I mean, you resign. and force him to testify. You're sorry, you're being forced to testify. Appoint, call him to be testimony. And if he refuses to do this, no Fifth Amendment fucking protection, Mr. Schiff. You're there. So when you violated the Secrecy Act against Nunes, explain how you did it. Who you cooperated with you? What government, what federal agents told you this contrary to this? Who did you talk to in the media? This is why this is anyone who understands the nature of what a pardon does and the reality of what the Fifth Amendment guarantee, if you have the Fifth Amendment, you can just say, I don't want to testify. I can prosecute me. I can have the right to remain silent. But if I've been guaranteed immunity, that Fifth Amendment protection is gone. And this is why you have to understand that this is my God, Fauci's in trouble. I think Rand Paul is glad that he got the pen because now they can force him to testify. And he cannot not testify. If he refuses to testify, go to jail. Do not pass code, not collect $200. You're going to be, Fauci, every day of his life is going to be in some crime, some court testifying about what he did about COVID, about every lawsuit from this point on. If you have a lawsuit against that, you can demand that he speak. And you're talking about COVID drugs and dangers of that. You subpoena the fucker. Why? Because he cannot say, I can't, I don't know. No, the president of the United States said you committed a crime. You're pardoned. There's no punishment for you. So explain what you did. What illegal activities did you do? How did, clearly, you see there's no illegal activities? But you're lying now because the president pardoned you. Catch-22. This is wonderful in that sense. They have to, I can say, I didn't commit the crime, but okay, but the president, why would he pardon you if he didn't think you cried? Oh, because you think, no, you were pardoned. You can't say I didn't get the pardon. You got the pardon. So now you have to cooperate. We can compel you. It's wonderful. This is going to be fun. Anyone who took the pardons can be used to testify against those who didn't get pardons. And then you got corroborating evidence from other testimony supporting and going and saying, these guys said this, you did this. So, come on, you got to tell. If you now start lying, that's perjury. 10, 20 years each time you lie. Not covered by pardon. So, this is what you have to understand about this. This is why, and I think someone like a killer like Pam Bondi, it's going to be ruthless killer prosecutor who has done these kind of prosecutions of people who have been given immunity and covered, and then can't therefore get cannot not testify. No Fifth Amendment protection. Oh God, this is going to be sweet. It's going to be fun. Jack Smith might ultimately get. Mark Garland will go. I think Kash Patel is going to be. I'm hoping Kash Patel gets it because as Kash changing the FBI, we'll get a new version of CONTELEPRO or ABSCAM, ABSCAM, where you start targeting Democratic congressmen and their wonderful level of financial expertise. Democratic congressmen and some even Republican congressmen and senators have their financial, their stock selection knowledge is so wonderful. But insider trading. So you target congressmen and senators for insider trading. You start sending a special prosecuting teams against Nancy Pelosi and her family. That's the funny thing. Nancy Pelosi's daughter and the recording of her testimony is actually more damning than, I mean, people who want to, Nancy Pelosi's daughter did more harm than Nancy Pelosi with that recording of what she said at that. Now that's getting wide. The wider, more attribution that video gets, the more it looks like January 6th was an inside Democratic job, the way it was done to basically create a Reichstag fire. It was the Democratic Party's Reichstag fire to justify their going after Trump and going after every Republican. That's why the pardon was necessary. This idea, the pardon was unworthy. No, see, they've already been. Most of these people have served more time in prison and more destruction of their lives than any Antifa person has. So this is why I'm, how can you justify that as a conservative? Easily, because it's called due fucking process of law, equality of the law. The fact that your side did let out, the amount of destruction and rioting the Democrats are permitted and then didn't punish during the 2020, the summer of 2020, the George Floyd riots and these things, and they condoned it and looked at it, and they didn't put people in jail. The burning of the St. John's Church in front of the White House, the attack on the White House, all the summer 2020. My God, that was far. January 6th, the idea that this was a big, really dangerous thing is a media hoax. This is the mainstream media and big social tech who cooperated with the Democrats to create a myth, a media lie, as much a hoax. January 6th was a hoax. Okay, yes, there was people who went there. Yes, that happened. But the narrative of how it happened, come on. Look into the way the police shot pepper gas bullets at people. Look at the number of flashbangs released. Why so many in the middle of a day flashbangs? This was done to basically you throw the flashbangs and pepper shoot everyone, not because they were you to make them violent, to make the correction. Herd them in. You encourage them to go into the place. In other words, they were encouraged to go in. Oh, but we're doing a safe. No. This was, you invited them in. You let them in. You brought them in. The idea that they were doing this, and then you use their presence. Then you justify the use of retaliatory violence, and then there's trespassing and delaying center procedure, and they used a thing that was created in the Enron law, a questionable law, Enron, and then he used it to do for criminal prosecutions. Interference in a civil a government procedure. That this is being used to basically turn misdemeanors into felonies. This was okay. If that's the case, then why aren't all the Antifa people serving these 20 years for burning down stuff and like this? No. So you have unequal protection of the law, unequal enforcement, selective enforcement. Oh, but that was Trump administration. Well, because the Justice Department under Trump refused to play arrest. They were ignoring the president. They were openly in rebellion against him. The Justice Department were working against the president. Oh, but this is the Constitution. Oh, nonsense. That you've committed all the government officials who openly sabotaged the Trump administration in his first term, violated the Constitution. I'm sorry, that's what happened. They violated the Constitution. They deserved. People like Mark Kelly, General Mark Kelly, is the biggest blowhard. He, I'm sorry, he might be, his son might have died for the country, but he's a blowhard. He sabotaged his press commander-in-chief. He actually, Kelly should have known better. He was he lied to the president. He misled the president. Huh? Isn't that the definition of illegal activity? who elected Kelly to do crap? He's a appointee. The president was elected, not Kelly. Therefore, when Kelly did that. I mean, I love that scene in West Wing. West Wing is a wonderful show. When the day that the chief of staff did something and the president was not doing it, the liberal guy is saying, "Oh, this is a coup d'état." And that famous scene, go watch it. It's hilarious because he had a medical disease and he was not incompetent, and the chief of staff was making military decisions or making decisions, and the president was not really capable of doing it. And who elected the chief of staff? No one. This was kind of a criticism this was kind of a classic liberal attack, even though it was against him, a liberal character in the show. It was a attack that they used against Reagan. Okay. Oh, Reagan was not really in mental capacity. He had a mental problem. He was, maybe a little, maybe he was kind of not, and therefore he didn't know what was going on, and that therefore these people, this is the whole criticism of Iran-Contra, right? That these officials were doing things without the authorization, or with the authorization, or without the president's authorization, and therefore we have to punish this. Well, if the Democrats want to complain about Iran-Contra, then why? They have committed things far worse than Iran-Contra during the Biden administration. So let's stop here. We're at 1 minute over an hour. I know it. I'm doing it. I was supposed to talk about just one thing. My wife's already been harassing me already, saying, "What's going on? Why aren't you telling me about the..." He goes, Corliss had a piece he was talking about Lord Bingham. He had comments on the post question. It was on the Not Friday. Go back to the two comments. He wrote a question reading Lord Bingham's book, Lulu of Law book, reminding me of the book of Kojev, Kojev's essays on the phenomenology of right, which is a book. It's not the translation is available by Roman Littlefield. It's available in English. It's an interesting book. His commentary on the essay on the phenomenology of right. It's an interesting essay. It's there. It is. He goes, I haven't looked at a copy, but he supposedly to present an argument that law is in some ways above politics, right? Based on the dialectic. That's the argument of this idea. Kojev argues that the justice and justice is at the peak here, and that this is the high point of this, and that politics must be serving justice. So law is justice in this fundamental sense, and therefore the international system and dialectic that produces law, has to be the higher point of this, right? Corliss goes, I wonder if this kind of dialectical argument is based on the idea of progress. Yes, it is. It's based on the, not progress, it's the master-slave dialectic, James. It's right from the phenomenology of mind, the master-slave dialectic right there. If you undertake that master-slave dialectic and then do the dialectic model of that, it is not progress. The progress isn't that. Progress is the idea of freedom, the idea of the master-slave dichotomy over time. So that judges now become, the liberal argument for using law and judges to limit the power of majority, yes. Because the problem here is there's no majority. The majority is that majorities are themselves localized entities. I mean, there's no way you don't have a global minority. From the point of view of the whole, it's too diverse, and the situation is too diverse, and there's no real. It's the problem in mathematics of a large population. If the population gets too big, the likelihood. And as long as you have diversity, you don't have homogeneity, you have heterogeneity in the situation. The larger the diversity and the level of the size of the population grows, once you have a diverse, as the numbers of diverse groups get beyond 2, then the likelihood, it dramatically decreases majority. So therefore, the number of options plus the population. As these two factors grow, then what happens? The likelihood of a majority win outcome becomes diminishing, right? That's what Pareto would even argue in his argument. So, in other words, the liberal arguments for restricting laws, this is how you need to do that. That once you have a situation where there cannot be democratic process, therefore you need a simple, in other words, that you cannot have the majority doing it. Therefore, the only thing the majority has accomplished was the mind, the global, the force of history has created like the communists said, it's the revolution. We know the revolution is happening. We've got the Leninist idea is that we know what the revolution, we know what the truth is. We know what the truth is. The system problem is this implementation problem. And therefore, yes, the majority won't do it. You don't care about the majority. The majority doesn't determine what truth is. History has determined what truth is. So the majority becomes not relevant. What the majority thinks is irrelevant. The truth is what the truth is. The dialectical process does not produce, it produces the truth, the ultimate truth about what is the just. And therefore, justice demands that it be implemented. Therefore, the lawyers and the judges have an obligation to implement the truth. The majority does not, their consent is irrelevant, right? That's the kind of understanding that this Hegelian Leninist construction of this. And the other thing that Corlitz wrote a couple of days ago, he goes that I hope the TV debate went well. I said, go check it out. I put the link down there in the description. I watched quite an interesting debate the other day between Gauchet and a younger academic from Sciences Po called Eugene Merleau, which has made a study about the state of exception in liberal constitutions. It became clear that she works from a critical intersectional point of view. Okay, this way. It was useful in showing that the intersection. It was useful in showing that the intersectional viewpoint, when it's set up in opposition to liberal democracy, seems to point to some version of voluntaristic communism as the idea. How this state is going to be reached is not clear, apart from some via some undiscovered form of non-liberal direct democracy. Again, that's why I think there was a revealing part of the debate where Merleau started to argue that the underlying imperialism behind liberal democratic ideas was being revealed and challenged in practical ways by the rise of non-liberal powers like China, Russia, and some Islamic countries. Gauchet asked whether these therefore represented the future she was looking forward towards. Right, that's a joke. I think Gauchet was kind of poking at her. Right, it does seem that to be a feature of the more radical intersectional left than that the practical result of their perspective could turn out to be gains in power for China and Islam, even if it's not what they intend. Exactly. This is the problem of this. I think Gauchet is right. I think Corlitz is right about. You're right about that. That the radical left doesn't understand. The intersectional doesn't understand. They're actually useful idiots to the real threats. In many ways, these guys are like the Menshevik and the communists against Lenin. In other words, you go look at the way Lenin used these utopians and these guys who are going to have a voluntaristic communism achieved by a participatory democracy. This is naive. This is Lenin making fun of the other Marxists, right? The other Marxists, the Bolsheviks. The Bolsheviks believed in power. The Bolsheviks believe in institutional structures, the dictatorship of the proletariat, and the reality of this. This is why, in many ways, I think, and Gauchet is. I'm reading from my friend Corlitz a point about the debate of Gauchet and Sciences Po was a very interesting thing. Now we're there now. We're at the end of our time. I don't have much more time. We're an hour and a half, and I think my wife is just coming out the door. So we have to wrap up now. So if you want to follow me on social media, please look at the social media links. You've liked it, hit the like button. We've had people checking already. 2 people liked it already. Hit the like button. If you liked it, please hit the like button, share it on social media, share it far and wide. Social media links, follow them, follow me on social media. The academic, want to know more about me as a researcher and a scholar, check out the academic social media. And if you want to help me to do what I do, you can do so through Patreon or Subscribestar, or buying one of my books to either your local bookstore or through a online distributor or through publishers directly. Well, that's it. I hope you had a good live stream. I will see you next week, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye. Take care.